Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
All right, 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Yesterday we remembered the events of 18 years ago, and we all probably have our own stories. And my story was, I grew up in that area and moved down here when my son was old enough. I took him up there to see the beautiful city I loved, and we went to the top of the World Trade Centers, and you got to see where Grandpa used to work down on the street level. And so we kind of had a relationship with the city and with those two buildings. And then when they were attacked and they fell, it was just heartbreaking in more than one way. What happened? And then we went back, I think it was 2004. We went on the 4th of July, and I think it was that year they were laying some kind of a cornerstone, but there wasn't, anything built yet. And then we went back a couple of years ago. I think it was 2017. I went back with my son, and now he's 33 years old. And we went down there. We saw the beautiful new Freedom Tower, One World Trade Center building, and of course those various, I don't know what adjective to use, but the two pools that are the memorials of those who died on that day. Our next guest has more of an intimate relationship with that part of Manhattan and than any of us probably will ever have. And in addition to that, it's an interesting parallel he's making, rebuilding that, and also rebuilding the nation. He's got an amazingly well-written book. It's called From the Ground Up, Rebuilding Ground Zero to Reengineering America. That kind of tells you everything, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Ambassador Charles A. Gargano, good morning, sir. What an honor to have you on our show.
Good morning to you, Larry, and thank you very much for allowing me a few minutes to talk about it.
Absolutely. And where are you right now?
I am in New York yesterday afternoon and last night. We got many of our people who worked for Governor Pataki and myself, and wanted to thank them. And we try to thank these people every year who joined us to take on this very horrific attack on our country, a loss of 3,000 lives, and how we rebuilt. I think it gave us it was a tremendous setback, but it gave us a very comprehensive, practical, and way to rebuild under such horrific conditions.
You're pretty vast in the things we can talk about. If I could just ask you one question that focuses on your engineering expertise. Can I ask you about the thing they call the bathtub underneath the World Trade Center towers? We heard that they could have collapsed and there could have been a massive flood, but they didn't collapse. What? Tell us, just help us understand what that is.
Well, let me try and explain that to you. When the buildings collapsed, first of all, from the ground that people are walking around to the bottom of the foundation was 70 feet. About 65 feet of that had water pressure. If you look at the level of the Hudson River, you see the level of the water.
Yeah.
That water pressure puts a lot of pressure. It's like water on a dam. And what we had to do, number one, the debris from the fallen towers were holding the walls up. But as we were cleaning it up, we had to anchor back with cables, maybe 30, 40 feet back, to hold the walls up. Otherwise, the water pressure would have caved the walls in.
That's crazy. Wow. And so obviously you couldn't make a move. Otherwise, somebody would have been hurt. Many people would have been hurt.
Oh, I mean, many people. It would have caved in, and we would have had a huge project on our hand, and we would have to have had dewatering systems lowering the level of water, the natural level, about 65 feet, which is very difficult. So what we did is we tied back those walls as we excavated the debris that was holding the walls up, and then we kept keeping that water down as well with dewatering systems until we rebuilt Tower 1, which went down to 70 feet.
Wow. And the new building tower, are the old, is the old bathtub or the old reinforcement, are they still down there?
Yes, the reinforcement is there. Obviously, when we built the foundation of Tower 1, the magnificent tower that is there now, that the foundation walls were built to retain the outside pressure. So that's not a problem. And then we built walls that were as thick as a dam wall is, if many people understand how thick a wall is. It could be 4 or 5 feet in thickness. So we have that totally secured now by the foundation of Tower 1, that beautiful tower that's 1,776 feet tall to the tower, the top of the tower. So it's all safe, but it took a lot of planning. It took good architects, which Governor Pataki solicited from around the world. And, of course, the one who designed, David Childs and his firm from Lower Manhattan, designed the first building. And they are all structurally sound, but we had to do it right. There were so many people saying, why is it taking so long?
I remember. Yeah.
Actually, it didn't, because one skyscraper in New York takes 5 or 6 years. So it took us between 9 and 10 to build where we are today, and it's just phenomenal what has been built so far.
It is. It's beautiful. I haven't been in the new building yet, but I've been right up against it. I just have reserved going up to the tower until I'm up there with Robin, my friend here. So
you have done so much in all of these decades with the physical engineering, and now you're turning your engineering expertise to address infrastructure, not just politically, but morally in your book.
Indeed. The infrastructure we have in this country is second to none, and we also have to thank former President Eisenhower for the interstate highway system. But when you have all of this great infrastructure, tunnels, bridges, roads, you have to maintain them. You have to keep them in good condition, otherwise they will deteriorate. And that is something that I believe. I owned a road building company. I was a partner in that company, and you have to keep everything in shape. You have to get the private sector to be willing to come into this process, and that is that the federal government can't do everything, number one, and number two, there's a lot of expertise out there in the private sector. So we have to bring the private sector in, not only for their expertise, but also for their investment. And they will get a return on their investment. I think that has to be done. I've been talking about it for a long time.
Was there something similar as far back as, for example, the Brooklyn Bridge? Was that same kind of cooperation happening, or was it also a struggle back then?
It was a struggle with the Brooklyn Bridge, because the Brooklyn Bridge is a very old design, and it was deteriorating for quite a while. But they've done a great job in restoring that. And again, I don't have all the facts to that, but it took them a long, long time. The Manhattan Bridge, right parallel with it, next to it, they've been working on that bridge for 50 years. So this is my point. I think you have to get the private sector in and partner with the public, partner with the government agencies that are in charge. But for the financing and for the building and the expertise, we have to get the private sector more engaged.
And there's an interesting parallel in what you're saying, because in our government right now, it seems that if you are a Democrat, you're probably more interested in letting the public sector, the government, take part of things, and the Republicans are more or less always saying everything should be privatized. But I hear what you're saying. There should be a partnership.
I am Republican, but I am more than Republican or Democrat. I'm an American. I love this country.
There you go.
And I want to do whatever I can for this country. And that's why I gave many years of public service, 30 years between President Ronald Reagan, President George H.W. Bush, and then Governor Pataki. I gave 30 years of my life in the public sector to do what I could do and bring the private sector type of operation and knowledge into government.
How do you get different entities to actually listen to each other without them just coming in like, I know the answer and I'm not going to take any thoughts from anyone else?
Well, that is a terrible, terrible attitude. You have to listen to everyone, especially those who have the expertise in those areas. You can have the political power, but you have to listen to the people who really know. I'm not saying some of that does not happen, but it's too little.
And does social media kind of undermine things that are trying to move forward?
Well, you're talking to a guy who believes that the media today is nothing like the media of even 30, 40 years ago. The media is supposed to deliver the news, not give you opinions,
That's
but
right.
not have their own biased way of talking about things, and it's happening too much nowadays.
Oh, my
What we
gosh.
have to do is say, you're the media, give us the information, we'll decide.
I love the strength in what you're saying. So do you, when we look, let me just say this differently. When we listen to people campaigning for office and we hear them talking about things like, like equal pay or things like global warming, are we not talking about the more important? Are they the lesser of the important things? Shouldn't we be talking about the infrastructure? Isn't that maybe one of the most important things?
Absolutely, in my opinion. But, Larry, everybody has a different opinion. That's why we are a democracy, a republic. We are a country where people have freedom of speech. When I rebuilt 42nd Street, which was a disaster, and I told Governor Pataki when I first took over my position as head of economic development as well as the Port Authority, I said, 42nd Street, they've been talking about it for 14 years. Let's rebuild it. He goes, go ahead. And I did. I made a deal with Disney World, but you know what happened? When I was speaking on the west side, there were people saying, why are you closing down this shop? I said, because they're selling drugs. Well, what about the other shop across the street? I said, because there's prostitution. The answers I was getting was, well, this is a democracy. People can do what they want. I said, I don't think so. I don't think the general public wants that. And we went ahead and finally rebuilt 42nd Street. And not only is that a magnificent development there now, but it helped, which I knew it would 20 years ago, help the whole west side of Manhattan redevelop.
You are, oh my gosh, I love what you're saying, and I never knew it was you. So I went, real quickly, I grew up in that area, and so I was 14 in 1964. When would I have been 14? In 69. I would have been 14 in 69. And I can remember going into the city. I was a Long Island kid, but I'd take the train in. My father probably would have had a heart attack if he knew. And it was, peep shows everywhere. It was peep shows. And for a 14-year-old boy, this was like, oh my gosh, this is great. But then as I got older, I thought, we better stay out of this area. It doesn't feel safe. Fast forward to the future when I bring my own son and everything is cleaned up. Everything is much better. Everything is nicer. And that's you. I mean, you're the one responsible for that. I never really realized who did that. And so thank you. But I wanted to ask you something, because one of the things that I hear, especially from people down in Greenwich Village, is the word gentrification. And they don't, I always say, what's wrong with gentrification? It looks good to me. Why wouldn't you want this? Can you comment on that?
Well, my only comment on that is that people are sometimes fixed in their ways, and they don't want the progress that we think would be good for all of the people. But we cannot be held back by that. We have to do what we think is right. Of course, I am no longer in government now because I'm older, but the fact is I would give my time to anyone when it comes to these issues without pay. I never wanted pay in the public sector anyway, but I try to explain it in this book from the ground up. There's so much in here, and typically as a construction man, as a licensed professional engineer, I don't put a lot of words in. I just put the facts and whatever is important for people to understand. And I think there are too many people, Larry, nowadays, excuse me for drifting off here, but there are too many people who were too young when 9/11 happened
Right.
18 years ago.
Right.
Some were not even born, and they really should read the book. There's no profit being made on this book. If there's anything, it goes to charity. But they will understand what happened, the tragedy, and how, we have kept this type of tragedy away from us nowadays, thanks to so many people in this country.
Okay, I just ordered your book, by the way, so I will now.
You have a great fan.
I love what you're saying, and I can't wait to read the whole thing. But I have a question for you that comes up every September 11th, and you're probably the best person to ask this of. Does everything add up that we've been told officially, or are there some unanswered questions about September 11th, 2001?
I think, look, you're never 100%, but I think many of the answers have been, questions have been answered. And I think through security, through rebuilding, through many things, this is a great country, regardless of, on that day and for a year after that. For me, it was just every day I was down at Ground Zero, and I looked at the people working together, holding hands. Yeah. Volunteers coming down, bringing coffee and water and other things to the people who were working there. And those people working, many of them have lost their lives since, and we have to continue to give them help, medical help, because these people were brave.
The book is called From the Ground Up, and it's such an honor to have Ambassador Charles A. Gargano on the phone. He wrote this book. I just bought one for myself. I found it on Amazon. Do you have a website, From the Ground Up book, FromTheGroundUpTheBook.com? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And yes, and it's doing well. But I think more people, as I said, I'm not doing this to make money. It's going to charity. More people should really read the book and understand what happened, especially those who were too young or not even born at that time.
So why do you think, and I'm thinking maybe the answer is in part at least to what you've already told us, why does Manhattan, even Brooklyn, feel safer to me now? Why am I more comfortable bringing Robin, for example, to Greenwich Village than I might have been in the 70s?
Larry, because it is safer. We now have so much security, investigations that go on, so many people watching what's going on in our city, in our state, in our country, and we have great people who are dedicated to make sure this type of horrific incidents don't happen again. And by and large, we're doing a good job of it in this country. Sure, there'll be a little incident here and there, but by far, we have a lot of control over this, and that's why, thank God, in 18 years, nothing so bad has happened.
That's right.
Your book is a reflection of camaraderie, because after September 11th, 2001, like you had just illustrated, people started working together, and then some people have drifted apart over these years, and they don't have the same attitude, but the majority of the people do.
The majority of the people absolutely do. It's the political parties, and I blame them all, not just one. Now it's one, in my opinion, but 8 years ago could have been another.
Yeah, right.
I think what we have to do is think about country.
I love your strength. Can I throw in a left field kind of a question? I have a friend who was with the New York Fire Patrol, which is now defunct, right? They lost one man on September 11th. His name is Keith Roma. He was not included in the count of firefighters that died that day, and the family and the fire patrol people have always wanted him to be included in on that number. Is there anybody you can talk to maybe get them to? That's all they want, is that number to be changed to include Keith Roma into the firefighters. He stands by himself.
Well, I would clearly start with the fire department of today, and they should be able to look into that and get it corrected. And if that person wants to send something to me, there's no question I will try, but I think better would be the fire department and the city of New York.
Where would we send it? Or do you want to do that off the air?
No, I mean we can do it off the air, but you might have my my email address, and it's CA Gargano, Gargano, at greenviewproperties.com.
Okay, it'll be coming from me.
All right, no, that's great.
Yeah,
and let me tell you something that we didn't talk about, but just for a little fun, I loved to play stickball when I grew up in Park Slope, Brooklyn.
Oh, how wonderful.
That's kind of funny.
How wonderful.
You and a million other kids, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, my gosh.
We were well organized.
What do you hope for the future, not just of New York, but of the United States itself? I know it's a tall order.
Well, our future, what I pray for is that we should all, Americans, as I know we're a democracy and we can have different views, but when it comes to the United States of America, let's work together. We are so lucky. We're so fortunate to be in the greatest country in the world. There's never been a country like this. And in so many ways that I won't go through right now, but everyone knows that. Let's all hold hands, work together, work out our differences that we have, and we always will have, because that's why we're a democracy. And, if we're a dictatorship, it would be different. They tell you what to do, and you keep your mouth shut. But the reality, we're not. We're a great republic, democracy, and we have to try and get along better with each other.
Oh, my gosh. Where do you, not your address, but do you live in the city, or do you live on Long Island? Where do you live?
Yes, I have a home in the Hamptons, and I live in Bayshore, and I had an apartment in Manhattan until the end of last year, when I decided to be closer to my son and my daughter, who were out there on Long Island, and that's where I am now.
Yeah, see, that's my dream. That's my dream, Rob. I'm going to have an apartment in Manhattan and a place out on Long Island.
You are such an inspiration, Ambassador. I love everything that you say, and people should take you and your book to heart. It's a wonderfully written book.
Yeah, I just bought the book. I would encourage you to buy the book. If anything that Ambassador Gargano has just told you has struck a chord, From the Ground Up is the title of the book. I found it on Amazon, and the website is fromthegroundupthebook.com. I'm sure the Barnes & Noble has it. Any bookstore will have it. From the Ground Up.
Barnes & Noble does have it.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful red, white, and blue flag on the cover. You can't miss it.
It's been a real honor, sir. You are going to get an email from me with a link to something I put out. What I did for my friend, just so you know, I put one of those petition things online, and so don't be scared by that. It's just gonna give you a chance to read. I have 770 something people who signed it, but there's nowhere near enough, and I don't even know if it's gone to the right people or not. So maybe you can help us with this. It's just one firefighter we want to see included in on the number. Nobody wants any money or anything. The family. When you read the article, you'll see what we're talking about.
Larry, I am for those people down there, not only those who lost their lives, I pray for them, but those who work down there and have cancer and awful diseases.
I know.
I've been trying to help, making sure that Washington is aware that we have to continue to help these people medically.
Absolutely, and I'm 100% with you. The firefighter we're talking about, by the way, his body was found on Christmas Eve, so you think about how long it took to find him. He was found standing in whatever tower he died in, and he was with like a dozen or so other people he was trying to escort out of there.
After saving 200 lives.
Yeah, he saved 200, they say. All right.
God bless his soul.
Well, you'll get an email from me so you can read what I'm talking about. Thank you so much, sir.
I look forward to it. Thank you both.
All right, we'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.